So this is just a short summary of our short history of the eubac system with the rollout in 2013 in Germany. That was the pilot country. And then we continued with Austria and France. And in 2014, we also added the UK in the partners of eubac system. Later on in 2014, there were the first auditor trainings in Spain as well, and this year in May in Italy. Now, what is really good in our very recent history is that we actually have auditors from third party. That means not auditors that come from the the building automation controls manufacturer side, but more on the consultants and some value-added partners, as well as institutes or training partners. So this is really good to see as a development, because it turns the auditing process into a more neutral and third-party process. Currently, we have 92 audits. This is to date. And you could see here the proportion of audits, European countries, with Germany being in the lead. Over 50% of the audits are performed in Germany. And then we have Switzerland, the United Kingdom, and we have some very good in Spain and Italy as new countries added to really a very good result. And then we have some countries like Turkey and Azerbaijan that are also active, or they took part in trainings. The 0, by the way, means that we have junior auditors in these countries, Belgium, Azerbaijan, who are to conduct their first audit in order to become authorized auditor. So this is the graph of how the different classes of eubac system are distributed, and you could see that we still have in the lower classes, or in class D and E, have almost half of the rated systems, which means there is a lot of potential and business out there to be done. In the building types, it is predominantly in office space, but we also have some samples of hospital, retail, hotel, and residential buildings, as well as education. This is the square meter, or the area of the audited area so far. And again, it is to expect that in the office buildings we would have the higher number. This is a summary of the training and events in between 2012 and 2014, and I'm pretty sure that all of you have already seen this one. So if we just focus on what has happened in this year so far, you could see countries and what type of training we had, including the webinars that one of them is today as well. So you could see the KPI training webinars that were conducted in English and German in the first half, April, May of this year. You also can see training in Italy and Spain, and also training in Germany, a few of them. DAO is our official training partner in Germany, and they do conduct 2 sessions per year at their premises, or they could also move and do it somewhere else. This distribution of audits in a tabular format, so in numbers and percentages. And you could see here, this is the total number of 92 with the number of audits per country. And then you also see the number of auditors. So now the ratio between auditors and audits is also improving, which means that we do have auditors that have more than one audit. And of course they will do, because they have to maintain their status. So everyone that is still active and is currently authorized as an auditor is in these numbers here. And we have 33 junior auditors, which means this is again potential for new authorized auditors that within the next 6 months conduct an audit, a successful audit. Okay, these are again the numbers, just a summary of it. And then the visualization on the map of the countries that have auditors. Audits have been conducted. Now you could see here some abbreviations for partner organizations. These are national organizations that partner with eubac, like the VDMA in Germany, BCIA in the UK, ACR in France, and ENACE in Spain. The contacts that you are all familiar with. These are our people working in the eubac office. Dr. Peter Hook, Thomas Müller, who is leading this or moderating this webinar, Andre Litiu, who is in Brussels and actively involved in lobbying and promoting eubac. Then we have also Colin Timmins, who is on the residential control side, and we have the office administrator. So I think this is all from me. Unless you have some questions to ask now, I'll be glad to answer. Any questions in the audience? Okay, I'll take it that there are no questions right now. If you have any, with, okay, Thomas?
Yes, I'd hand over the screen now to Jan, and I hope it works well.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Can you hear me, Thomas, and everyone?
I can hear you.
Very good. And hopefully you can see the...
And I also can see the screen.
Very good. Very good. Well, hello, everyone. I'm pleased to take part in this webinar to introduce a new version of the checklist. Some of you probably have seen some pre-releases of it. Have the final version available to download from the web. And as usual, when doing these introductions, I will be following the PDF document that was sent out. Improvements have been made in the new checklist, and take every point one by one and demonstrate in the checklist, or just discuss around what is new in this version. So I'll get right on with that and talk about the first bullet point, which reads: include a new guideline about the color coding of cells. And this is under the guidelines in line number 8, where there is an explanation of how the color coding in the different cells work. And generally speaking, white cells, or cells with a white background, I should say, are open to fill-in data, while the light yellow cells are either protected cells that are used for calculations, or they could be cells that are not applicable. So, for instance, if you use, say, you have no heat recovery here, the cells following that will be yellow, and vice versa. If you put a 1 in this cell, you will see that the no heat recovery cell will turn into yellow. So this is hopefully a help to make the right filling out of the form. Going back to the guideline, you can see that cells with a brown background indicate that there is information in the cell that is unnecessary or incorrect. So every time it turns out as brown in the background, you should have a look at what you've done and see how you can correct that. It's something wrong there. Cells with a red background indicate that there are too many alternatives selected, and to demonstrate again, if I choose 1 in this cell and a 1 in this one, you get a red in the summary points, indicating that you have filled in both and you shouldn't. So you have to take away one of them, and then it goes back yellow. When reading this the other night and preparing for this meeting, I understood I have overlooked this cell, the information missing, because if you start using this line, you will get a red here as well, indicating that there are now 8 different cells that should be filled out, most likely, and that perhaps should be added to the explanations in the guidelines. There are also cells with a gray background, and they are gray when the names that you've entered in the cell has not been used as reference in the rooms or the the domestic hot water tabs. So when you start filling out, for instance, an air handling unit name, it is as indicated here, gray. But if you in the rooms tab, in the sections concerning air handling, if you choose one of them, it now should turn white again here. So when you've done all your filling in, you can go back and see whether you have used the different air handling units, the different hot heating and distribution networks here, or if you use the cooling distribution networks somewhere in the rooms or domestic hot water taps. So use that as to help to find any errors that you may have have done. So that also, when the name has been used as reference, the background will return to white. Yes, I demonstrated that. So that was the first bullet point about the color coding. Another guideline in bullet number 2 is about KPIs in line number 10 here. The number of implemented KPIs is indicated by a row and KPIs. You put a 0 when the KPI is not implemented, and you evaluate between 1 and X when there is an implemented KPI. And the way this works is that if you have, say for instance, 2 different air handling units that are exactly the same, you can use this alternative here, and now the KPIs should have something between 0 and 2. So this is a little different from other cells where you always put in a 1 in here. In these cells you put in 0, 1 or 2 in this particular case. If there were 3 units, of course, it could also be 3. So you tell how many implementations of that specific KPI is done in the air handling unit control. So that is the guideline in line number 10. Also, for reading up on, we included a listing at the very end. So here you have all the KPIs listed that are used, and here's the name of the KPI, and here you see that this is used in section 7.2. And 7.2 is in the TBM tab, and here you find the KPI. So if you want to have a look at what are the different, here is a complete listing of them as they are used right now. That was bullet number 3. Bullet number 4 is about a guideline concerning the definition of on-site renewables. Yes, this is something that has been discussed and agreed upon. Sorry, wrong. Line 34. Yes, here we have the on-site renewables. So you have some different options here. Yes, it's an on-site renewable if it's a solar heat gain for domestic hot water and or heating. If it's photovoltaic panels, if there's a heat pump with a yearly COP over 2, if it's combustion heat power with non-fossil gas generated on site, or if it's a wood-fired heating plant. Things that are not considered as on-site renewables are listed here. If it's a CHP with natural gas, if it's free cooling, night purge, etc. So here you have the rules for what is considered on-site renewables, and you should remember that on-site renewables are here in this section 9.3 in the TBM tab. We also introduced a new check, bullet number 5, that only one generator is not indicated when there is in fact more than one generator in a heating plant. We found that very often people define a heating plant, so there is one heating plant, and they say only one generator. And when they come to the heating generators, they either define 2 equal generators here, and when selecting the heating plant, now you get a brown indication here. And this is to tell that if you have two of those, you must fill in one of the cells here. So this should help avoiding the problem of having more than one generator and still using the cell of only one generator. And it also works the other way around, that if you have only one and try to use one of these cells, you should use only one generator instead, and you also get a brown indication to tell that there is something wrong. And the same check goes for cooling, where you have the same 3.8 section, which is combined with the number of generators. That was bullet number 5 and 6. Bullet number 7 included a cell in each of the data input tabs to display the current number of points with a colored background that changes to reflect the eubac system labeled colors. These are the cells up here. And you find them in every tab. So in the air handling unit, it's placed rather to the left. In the rooms tab, the same to the left, and domestic hot water, and TBM, and so forth. And if you have a different checklist, and this is one that has been filled out, you get the 82 points of this particular checklist, and you get a green background. And the green comes from the eubac label coloring. So that because this is an A label building, you get the in-between green, not light green, not dark green, but in between. That is now used for the indication of points in the different tabs. So while you fill out, you can see how points hopefully go up. And if you want to do some testing to say that in this particular case, for instance, you have this functionality with multi-stage control. If you go up one level, how much would that change anything to the points? We can test by doing that, just like that. And the number of points went up one step, but it didn't go over 85. So you didn't get the dark green background and an AA label. So that's a way of doing some testing of what would be the change of points and so forth if you had different functionality. Now I go on with bullet number 8, and that is we introduced a new tab called Report. I quickly showed that. This is the potential points report, which is automatically filled out. And when you have an empty checklist, you have something like this. Or if it's actually not quite empty at this point, because I filled out a few things. But if we look at the other one, where the 82 or 80, you can see that here you have a visual indication of what can you more do to the controls of the plant. And here you find some small red bars. In the domestic water supply, there is nothing to be done. Here is very little as well. In the ventilation area, you have a little in this section 4.1. And the idea behind this report is that you perhaps want to make a printing of it, and that printing would look something like this. And this paper you could take to the building owner and perhaps discuss doing some improvements by pointing out that these red bars here, they would be doing this and that to the plant, and from there on do some business. So your report. We added Italian language to the checklist. Our Italian friends provided a complete of Italian, which is found in this column in the L tab, and Italian is now among the different languages that you can configure for the checklist, which is great. Bullet number 10, we extended the number of countries in the list here, so it's now quite long. They're all 2 letters country codes, as the international standard says, and it's now the full European Union, and Norway and Switzerland have been entered, and also to cover any other countries that are not listed, there is an XX, which you can use if you are for some reason doing an audit in a country that is not listed. But of course the listing can be extended in the future. So that was bullet number 10. There came up an idea to add another column in the details tab. So now the potential, which was previously only potential points, is now also potential savings in percent. And if I go to the other, where there is some figures, here you can see that there is a potential here of 1.25 points, and that, according to the rough estimate of 1 point equal 0.5% of savings, is 0.62% of savings potential. A little bit of help has been added there. Okay, that was bullet number 11. Yeah, bullet number 12 is about a modified input macro to give an improved error message in local language if user tries to import an older checklist. So now, if you try to use this import data from a version 24 checklist, there was in previous some kind of error message in English, but that has now been improved, so there is a local language message to tell that you should import only from version 24. If you tried, for instance, to do a version 23 import, you need to have a version 24 checklist first and import from version 23, and then go to the version 25 and import from the new version 24 version of the old checklist. So that new message should make it perhaps a bit easier to understand what's going on if you did that mistake. Number 13, created a new tab called Runtime. Yes, this Runtime tab has been created because in the previous version it was included in the notes, and it was here to the right of the actual notes. But we found out that it would be a better idea to have a separate tab and perhaps a bit more space, that is more entries. So there are now 5 entries for filling out the start and stop times. And so the estimated runtime table has been moved, but I'd like to point out that if you import a version 24, unfortunately you have to fill in this new tab manually. It is not picked from the Notes tab and included here. And the reason for that is that some people who imported from version 23 overwrote the runtime tab in the Notes tab, so or the runtime table in the Notes tab. So to avoid this problem, you have to do it manually. So here we have an automatic calculation. If you change the start time to something different, say, I don't know, 6 o'clock in the morning, you get a calculation of 11 hours, and you're now up to an average of 28% over the week. So that is an automatic view. But if you prefer, you can actually also now make a direct entry into the hours. So if you have a very complicated scheme, but you know that it equals, say, I don't know, 12 hours, you can put in 12 hours, and you probably would like, in this case, to take away the start and stop times and just say it, and that will now go into the calculation. So that's a different option you have now as well. So this new tab actually was created because we wanted to give some more help when filling out the runtime in here. So the runtime tab is used twice in the RN units tab and the rooms tab. So now here you see the different alternatives as a little pop-up, and when you click this, you get the different options, and you can select, say, the 29%. When working on this last night, actually, I discovered that there is in fact an error in version 25, which I corrected last night, which makes this one that I'm now demonstrating work a little bit differently from the one you have. The one you have does not update this little pop-up. The numbers here are going to be the correct ones, but the pop-up didn't work. It's my fault. I did a test of this. Unfortunately, when this tab, the RN unit tab, was unprotected, and when you get the protected version, it doesn't work. I've overcome that problem in this version, and in the task group we will discuss whether we will want to issue a small update of the version 25 with this corrected, or if we wait a little and pick up perhaps some more errors and do the update later. But you will hear more about that later on. Right now, again, the pop-up is not going to show the right data, but the little button that gives you the alternatives is going to work the way it should. I'm very sorry about that. This was number 14. There has been a number of bug fixing and other corrections. There was a gap where the conditional formatting did not work correctly in the Rooms tab. This only happened when you have in the Rooms tab used more than 100 rows. As you may remember or have seen, there are up to 500 rows at the moment here. And the problem occurred after row 100. So it shouldn't have influenced many people, but there were a few instances I've noticed when I found this error. It's now corrected. we also corrected the calculation of points in the summary tab. There was a few instances where let me show the other one here in the summary tab. You have 83 points here, and you have an A. And the rule is that when you get 85 or more, you have a double A. Now, in some few instances, it showed up here 85 and still an A. And that was because the points were actually a little below 85, but it was rounded to 85. And you could see at the very end in the Details tab the actual number of points with 2 decimals. So 83, in fact, is 83.45 in this particular case. And when this problem occurred was when you had here 84.56, for instance. That was rounded to 85 here, but still an A. So we decided that instead of rounding, we did a truncation, which meant that everything up to 84.99 was 84, not rounded to 85. So now with this new version, we should always read, for instance, 84 and A, and then when it comes to 85, it should be AA. That was bullet number 16. Number 17. It turned out that the hyperlinks that you have here in the Details tab, when you click on, for instance, this one, it will jump to 7.1, the TBM tab. That only worked in English, and that was because of a feature, if you will, in Excel, which I had to overcome. And now it works in all local languages. Bullet number 18 included an improved handling of the names of the area units in the AHU tab to create a drop-down list without blanks in the Rooms tab. That was in some cases, if you used spaces here in between area name units and things like that, you could have a list that we didn't show the area name units here in the Rooms tab consecutively. So when you use this list here, they should just come like this, and that has now been corrected. And the same thing I did also with the heating and cooling plants and distribution networks. So that should now be fixed, and you should always get a drop-down list that only lists the units that you have entered, independently of if you did that with some spaces in between, or if you started in line number 14 or something like that. Okay, so that was the improvements and the bug fixing and so forth. I now go to the next section, which is about the distribution of version 25. We decided that now with the different languages being added, and perhaps more languages in the future, it's going to be difficult to distribute exactly the same version in all different languages, exactly the right. So we decided that from now on, we only distribute the international version in English. And then when you downloaded that version, you create language version. And you do that by going to the L tab, and you choose, for instance, French. And there is some background work by the macro, which translates everything to French. So now everything, including pop-ups and whatever, is in French. And the next thing you probably want to do is code being France, like this, and perhaps for future use you put your own name in here as well, and you make a save as to save this template for future audits. So I hope that will work well. And I also want to encourage those were to training classes this year and had some pre-releases of the checklist. Please download the latest, because there have been good things added at the very end, and you want to pick up those as well. We've seen some pre-releases being sent in as audits, but we want to avoid that for the future by encouraging you to download the official version. This time I also added some additional recommendations that we have discussed as the consequence of all the audits that we have gone through, all the 92 as you heard it. We want to encourage better use of the Notes tab. Some of you send in excellent accompanying documents, PDFs of drawings and everything. Still, it is very useful if you have a short description of the room functionality, unless, of course, some kind of PDF sent in as well. But for our understanding, when doing the checking of the audits, it's very useful to understand how is heating, cooling, ventilation, lighting for the different types of rooms. Because normally you only have, a few types of office rooms perhaps, and rooms, perhaps some auditorium or something, and you have some other spaces that are perhaps not as well equipped, and so on and so forth. If you just give a very quick description to say that you have heating radiators and chill ceiling, constant air volume inlets, or you have nothing, no ventilation, whatever, please write that in the notes. It helps a lot. We also encourage that if you're claiming very high functionality, so you're indicating 3, like in the here you're using, say, this one. It's an indication of a very high functionality implemented. It helps if you tell what is that functionality, how is that implemented. We've seen very few comments on actual tests. If you have had a look at the documentation from eubac, you've seen that there are tests being recommended for almost all functionality, and we would like to see more of testing in the future to verify it's actually there and working. So if you please write about it. That also helps for future re-auditing. You tested that last time. Now maybe you want to test some of those again and some new. So I also wrote that the quality of audits has improved over time. I'd like to think it's because training has been better and better, but also because the checklist perhaps is a bit easier to use. But still we see a few errors come more regularly from audits. One is about the KPIs. I brought that up earlier, and that is about how you fill in the KPI columns. But please beware that in the KPI columns, it's not one to indicate just a you've done in the other one, in the other columns mostly. This is where you say a 0 if it's not implemented, 1 or 2 or 3 or whatever, if it's been implemented in 1 or 2 or 3 of the rooms in that particular line. Another thing is the use of sections 1.8 and 3.8. 1.8 is in the heating. This is here about the priority between the different generators. There you should absolutely be helped now with the new indication, the color coding. We also have a struggle with people using the tabs section, and this is in the room. Maybe I should go back to English to help everyone understand what's said here. In the Rooms tab, you have the emission control, which is for normal heating emission, not tabs, that is. And you have this section 1.2 for tabs. And tabs is really when the heating is in the concrete, the slab of the building, rather than floor heating, which is considered being normal heating as an alternative to heating radiators and so forth. So please beware of what is meant by tabs. We also have a struggle with the fan coils. So over here you have these sections 4.2 and 4.6 for airflow and pressure control with fan coils, and supply air temperature control with fan coils. And I understand it's tempting to use those as soon as you have fan coils in the room, but it's really only when you have fan coils which has direct outside air coming into them, not coming from an air handling unit, not when it's recirculating the room only, but when it comes from the outside. So far, we have had no implementation of that in the 92 audits that we have seen. So one option is perhaps to take those away. We will be discussing that because they are very often mistakenly used. One other thing is the domestic hot water, where some people use more than one of the sections, 1.2 to 1.4, where it's specifically said that you only use one of those. There is currently no checking that you only use one of those, but maybe that will come in the future. It's not many people do that, but if you, and again, it's always a good practice to start by using, by checking that you have the latest version, going into the eubac website and checking that. So that concludes my introduction to the version 25, sorry, and I'd like Thomas to open up for people to ask questions. I haven't seen if there have been any questions presented in the chat, but Thomas, can you let people speak?
Unmute everyone now, so everyone is allowed to talk and ask questions.
Okay, go ahead.
Are there any questions to Jan about his presentation or about the version 25? Okay. Jan, I cannot see if there is any questions in the chat, and if there are no questions from the audience now.
Yeah.
I want to say thank you. Oh, and I think we will meet on the next webinar next week.
Right. Okay. Well, thank you all for listening, and good luck with new audits, and the new version will work well for you.
If
Okay.
there are questions from you now to the presentation or to the version 25, you can also use the LinkedIn forum to ask Jan about this, or you contact direct to him or to the office. So thank you for your attendance, and thank you Jan and Bonnie for your presentation.